Today's scripture comes from our daily reading from the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapter 3, and we're looking at verses 13 to 17, which covers the baptism of Jesus, something that we read about in the Gospels, that Jesus himself was baptized by his just slightly older cousin, John. And the Gospels record that when Jesus was baptized, that he heard, and our verse for the day, verse 17, and a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." And it's the baptism of Jesus, which, especially in Mark, Matthew, and Luke, is followed by Jesus' time of testing and temptation in the wilderness. It's that combination of the baptism, Jesus hearing this voice, almost commissioning him that now it's time to get started because you are my beloved Son and I'm pleased with you. Obviously, beloved means I love you. And this begins Jesus' ministry. And I don't know how much you remember about your own baptism. I was a boy, not yet even a teenager, when I was baptized in the same time as my sister Suzanne, who's 15 months older than I am, and that was really kind of a marker on my Christian journey of I'm on God's team. And one thing I want to highlight for you, though, from Jesus' baptism in Matthew's Gospel, is how important this voice is. And the voice says, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." And the voice, if you will, returns in Matthew chapter 17 in another significant moment in Jesus' life. And that's what's known as the Transfiguration. When Jesus has gone up onto a high mountain and he's taken his inner core, his inner three of Peter, James, and John with him. And suddenly there's a Moses who represents the law and Elijah who represents the prophets, and they are there, and Jesus is conversing with them, and the disciples are overwhelmed by what they're seeing and witnessing and hearing. And here we hear again in Matthew 17 in verse 5, while he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And interesting that that phrase is added in the presence of Peter and James and John, and it's a message not just for them, but for all of us, that Jesus is God's beloved Son, God is pleased with Jesus, and we, like Jesus, are to be baptized and then to listen to him and to obey all that he commands us to do.